Water Management Committee meeting for the month of August. It's the 9th of August and of 2016, and it's 2 p.m. I must also tell you that the meeting is being recorded and it is being live broadcasted. So, Jane, would you like to lead off with the information you have?
Sure. We are in the middle, I would say, of our water sampling program for Nauset Estuary. Our volunteers were out collecting the third round of samples on Monday. We will have 2 more sampling events, and then hopefully at the end, I'm hoping we have much faster turnaround than around time in terms of receiving the results of all that sampling work than in the past, because that's obviously very important sounding board for us to consider in terms of our efforts in our nutrient reduction strategies. So again, that work is being all conducted by volunteers. We really do appreciate all of their efforts, and without our volunteers, we couldn't conduct this program in this fashion, and certainly with the budget that we have. So again, thanks a lot for everyone's participation. We have had some really good coverage. I think I sent you all the link. The Boston Globe on last Sunday in the magazine section covered an article that highlighted some of the challenges we face on Cape Cod in sort of a threefold approach, I would say. She talked about environmental challenges, but also, as we are very well aware, there is a financial aspect to projects getting funded, and I thought she really presented some of the very balanced article, and Eastham was part of the coverage. We talked about a little bit in the interview about some of the drinking water issues, and then also we talked about our plans going forward with an integrated nutrient management approach to looking at how we can improve it, particularly focused on Nauset Estuary, and of really the highest level of importance, Salt Pond and Town Cove. So we talked a little bit about those issues, and those are covered in that article. So if you haven't had a chance, I would encourage you to read it, and it's also available online, as I understand. And we do have a copy of it, a link to it. If anyone is interested, I could certainly provide that.
I've got 2 paper copies here, if folks are interested.
So, you know, we have moved forward with some of the initial site assessment at Salt Pond, as I mentioned last meeting. Of course, we're in the middle of the summer, and so a lot of that work that was really concentrated and the effort was full speed ahead. Now we have people from the commission, some of our consultants, et cetera, on holiday vacation. So moving those projects forward is a little more difficult in the summertime, particularly with the seashore being their height of activity. So although I have reached out to the commission, some of the staff is on vacation, as I said. I want to plan a meeting to regroup with our team, as I'm referring to our partners at the Cape Cod National Seashore, our partners at the Cape Cod Commission, and eventually partnering with the town of Orleans in moving some of those efforts further down the road. As of last week, just working with our wastewater consultants, we are going to try to put together some additional projects for grant consideration, and so that's kind of underway, but again, this is our busiest time of year, so it's pretty hard to move a lot of that forward at this time, but I know we'll be back at it full speed next month for sure, and anything we can do in August we will be doing. But so that is what's going on. I'm sure many of you are aware that the Board of Selectmen, acting as water commissioners, have draft municipal water system rules and regulations posted, and there will be an upcoming meeting. I know several of you have, or at least Adele, I know for sure, has submitted comments, and they are looking for comments. So I believe that meeting is
The 15th.
the 15th.
Yeah,
And do
it'll
you know
be
the
this Monday.
time?
I assume it's the regular, I think it's 5 o'clock. I can double check. It's probably the regular time for the selectmen meeting,
Okay.
since it's Monday.
So on the other front of moving things forward, although I don't really have anything to report at this time, I did meet with the pond consultant that had done, they're actually a merged company now. We had hired ACT as the company who actually applied the alum treatment for both Great Pond and Herring Ponds, and that company has been acquired and consolidated into a larger company now called Solitude. So we had that on the to-do list for some time. We had the scientists come down to look at the pond. I was accompanied by Neil Andres and Mike O'Connor from Natural Resources. And basically, they were tasked with looking at the current status and then sort of giving us some ideas on remediation and/or next steps. So I am still awaiting that report, although they did meet with us. We didn't go out on the pond itself, but we looked at pretty much the landing in back of the elementary school, and then we also went around on the Methodist church side, I will call it, that area there. So we gave them a pretty thorough look at the lake, and I'm still awaiting the report. So as soon as I get something back, I will let you know. And I did contact Liz Moran, who is our limnologist, to let her know that report would be coming too, so I would circulate that to her as soon as I get something back. In terms of the landfill, some of the policies and decisions that are made related to the municipal water rules, regulations, and policies is incorporated into decision-making that's underway at this time. So I don't have anything more. That's pretty much it.
The tech memos 3 and 4, where do they stand?
They are under development.
They have any sort of projected completion date? or-
They were hoping to get this done sooner rather than later. Some of the difficulties have been actually the difficulty of using some of the tools in the black box of the Cape Cod Commission. And so they have actually decided to kind of go back up a little bit and doing it the old school way, because they are finding that their projections are more ground truthed in doing it that way. So, so the tools actually delayed some of the reporting and cost estimates. So I would expect, I actually missed a call with the consultant this week, so I would expect something, I would say, in the next 4 weeks. So the work is underway, it's just, summertime, so it's a little difficult to get a report out.
If you want to drop back a minute as to where you find these draft regulations, when you go on the town's homepage, there's the draft water rules and regs, and then up above the water project webpage. As I have discovered, and I've pointed this out, and I guess it'll be changed, but it hasn't been changed yet. If you go here, you can read the draft water rules and regulations, but there's no link to comment. If you access them through the water project webpage, you go to, as I recall, I think it's latest news. I gotta go down here a little bit to be sure. Yeah. You can do it up at the top or down here. Click on latest news. That takes you to draft water rules and regulations. Click on that to open it up, and as you can see, there's a box down here to comment. So after you open it up, read it. Not quite as enjoyable as Shakespeare or something of that nature, but it is readable. then you can close it, go back to that page, and make such comments as you wish to make. And yeah, you will at some point get a response to your comments, or some of them may be addressed at this meeting on the 15th, which is a public hearing on the regulations, so.
Adele, could I ask you to do me a favor? We get a lot of calls asking about beach water quality. Could I ask you, if you go back to the department,
To the town?
towns,
Okay.
and then departments, to the health department, I'll show you the link to the beach water quality testing results.
Okay. Okay, so where do we want to go,
Under
down?
town departments,
Okay, and then Board of Health or Health
Health.
Department? Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I must not have enough blood in my fingers. I have trouble with these touch things. Okay,
and then you just scroll down further. And these are all of our projects sort of going on that, we try to keep updated. But in terms of the beaches, if you click on beaches, and then beach testing, this links you to the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment website. And so if you scroll down and you want to go under the town, and there's a drop-down box.
yeah, I see it.
And so if you want to see any other town on Cape Cod, you could see the results if you're going to another town. And that will give you the latest water quality test results for our fresh and saltwater ponds. So people ask
good.
this a lot, and they do keep it updated,
And everything has passed.
Except we had one closure, we had one exceedance at Salt Pond. And keep
Okay.
in mind, my test results are based on bathing water quality, which is a different standard for freshwater and saltwater, but that's what this is based on. Whereas other natural resources, for instance, monitors under the Division of Marine Fisheries, they have different standards that they're looking at for shellfish and so forth. So this is based on bathing water quality standard for fresh and salt water.
Is the standard posted somewhere?
The standard for what's an exceedance?
Well, it just said passed and failed, and I was just
Yeah,
wondering based off
they used
of
to
what?
actually, I get the counts,
Okay,
and I believe we post, so when I get my results back from the laboratory, it's based on a cell count, coliform forming units
okay.
per 100 ml. So I get an actual count. And what we're trying to do is simplify this for the public so that if it's below the standard, it's considered passed. If it's exceeding the standard, it's retested immediately. But I do have that information if anybody really wants specifically
They might-
what the count was.
Yeah, when you're on that page, I moved away from it, but up at the top, it has the bathing beach, whatever, something, bathing beach water quality. And if you go back to that page, they've got a long narrative. So it's possible someplace in that narrative, they tell you,
There it is.
yeah, I'm not gonna take the time to go through it all, but so that would be a possibility, and they might have links to something else. that
And we get
explains.
annual reports, we get, so forth.
Ah,
So they
lots
have-
of rats in Mashpee. But I got away with those when I left the cities. I've always lived in cities, well, except for New York, we didn't have rats in the Bronx, but in Baltimore and in Washington, we had rats in the alleys.
You got him in Eastham in the First Encounter Marsh, big time.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll stay out of the first account of Marsh in that case.
So,
Okay.
just very handy, thank you for showing that. I was going to suggest that we go to a review of the minutes, because I think it's a nice reminder of the subjects we were thinking about when we last met, and might help us lead into the topics that we still have here. So I've got a copy, looks like Scott's got a copy.
Anybody I didn't hear from, I've given a paper copy to. The rest of the people said they read them online, so.
Okay. The,
I have page 1 of 2. Oh, it's on the back side.
Well,
Okay.
page 2 doesn't.
Yeah.
doesn't
Oh.
have much, really.
yeah. Let's see, Adele, about 3 inches down, you've got AECom. Are they our contractor now, or Jane, or are we working with GHD? It's-
No, the way this worked is through the 208 project, they had money that they needed, that they received about $300,000 from DEP, and they needed to spend the money by the end of the fiscal year, which was June 30th. So they actually already had employed AECom, is a pretty large environmental engineering firm, civil engineering, on board with them, working on various aspects of the 208 project. And when the money needed to be spent or returned in such short order, they chose to have AECom conduct the environmental engineering work on behalf of the various projects that were selected. So Eastham benefited from both the permeable reactive barrier initial site characterization project, and also for looking at stormwater best management practices to include not just the infrastructure improvement that is funded by Mass State Highway, but also to look at nutrient reduction options for that collection system. So both of those projects were done by their company, and I have requested a meeting with them to review the findings, to review their report, and to sort of lead us into the next steps. And again, as I mentioned, staff at the commission are out on vacation and so forth. So I've asked a couple of times for those meetings, and they will be forthcoming, but I don't have them scheduled at this point.
Yeah, I see. AECom is also the contractor helping Orleans. And it does seem that there's some commonality between the types of projects we were thinking of and the types of projects that Orleans was thinking about. So it's I attend the meetings of the Orleans Water Quality Advisory Panel, and so I listen to the professionals talk about the various technologies, and I think it's a plus in the sense that anything that their consultants learn in Orleans could be applicable here in Eastham, because basically we're same part of the Capes, similar soils, things like that. Also maybe different size. You know, we're more of a house area, cottage area, and they're a little more dense population down there. Just, you know, my own observations on that. So if we want to continue
I move we
reviewing.
accept the minutes then as presented.
So any second we have on that? So I can certainly, if I can second it, I will second it. And I don't see a lot of folks ready to make a comment, so I'm going to say all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Not hearing anything, so we've got, what's that make us, 7, 8? 8 in favor? 8?
But Ken, Jane?
I don't vote.
Oh,
No, she
excuse me.
doesn't
Oh.
get to vote.
Oh, excuse me, 7, 0, and 0. So, okay.
Play another game here
Yeah,
with the computer.
But that does remind me, Jeff, I wanted to ask you, did you get sworn in?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, all right, that was the step I was still wondering about what was happening. All right, then, let's see, we've, I was just going to start out with a general announcement that I do, and we have Windmill Weekend coming up. I guess it's something like the 9th or 10th of September. And I have in the past gone with a table of different documents,
It'll be the 10th and the 11th.
10th and the
So
11th.
the 8th is a Thursday. That is primary day, by the way, folks. Don't forget to vote. There's a primary on Thursday, September 8th.
Oh. Okay, primary.
So that's being a Thursday. Saturday and Sunday have got to be the 10th and 11th.
Yeah. So in the past, I've set up a card table and brought along various documents, copies of our brochure, and engaged the public in just a general conversation. I'd like to do that again this year. I find that it gives me a little better sense of the public that the town serves through this committee. And since I'm not a long-term native here, it helps me see different points of view, what questions people have, what their level of understanding is. So I will go ahead and do that. This year, I do have a paper copy of the 208 plan that Cape Cod Commission published. I was fortunate to be in their offices back about 4 months ago, and I apparently spoke well to one of their staff, and they said, well, here's a paper copy, you can have it. I find just having something that's that thick and that well turned out as a document is a way of engaging people on the subject, bringing them up to date as to where we are on the plans and what's happening next. So,
Charles, I'll make a little, like one of those things that sits in like a, what are they, 9 by 12 or something, that you plastic things with the website for where people can find the plan. So, because I don't know. Could be a lot of people like me who try to avoid paper.
okay.
I spend half my life trying to get rid of it. So and also that means that they're not going to be able to get paper copies, so they will have access to read it. If they want to, they can go online.
Yes.
And they can select what they want to read.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it does seem that Cape Cod Commission is kind of holding paper copies because of the expense of making them. So,
Well, yeah.
but you can go online. And, yeah.
I also just pulled up here, because we talk so much about the Orleans Water Quality Advisory Panel. You can go to the Town of Orleans website, as you see, and they have a list of all their meetings, and they have their minutes, and depending upon what else is going on, at times they have sort of these papers that we've seen from time to time, what their recommendations and that. So that's all on this website, so that anybody who's interested can go there and, see what they've been doing and what they're talking about. It's just the Town of Orleans website, and then you just put in OWQAP to get the Orleans Water Quality Advisory Panel.
Yeah. Could you just go down a little bit? I'm just curious.
These are the meetings, these are the workshops,
Yeah.
this is presentations at the workshops. I'm not certain whether I think some of them may be actual videotapes. Let me see. Oh, just pull up one and see. This is the attachment. This is, maybe not. No, these are PDFs. And then they have, there are links on the side to their reports, general program information, all this sort of stuff. So it's all there. I mean, if anybody wants to see what they've been doing.
Yeah, Jeff?
Are there opportunities for the towns to actually discuss these collaborative sort of efforts? I mean, how does that occur? I mean, I'm assuming other than just knowing what Orleans is doing, do you ever have meetings with them, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they
Jane, you-
haven't met yet, but I would think as the wastewater planning goes on, they are going to have to meet because we share a watershed.
Right.
And one of the requirements of the Cape Cod Commission is that where you have a shared watershed, you have to come up with a collaborative plan. I think so far it's been going on more at a staff level in terms of, like this sampling that Jane has been talking about, that's a collaborative effort with Orleans. We're doing our parts and they're doing their parts. And as we get closer to actually implementing things, there will have to be some collaborative discussions. I think there's been some exchange of paper between the two boards.
Yeah, the boards of selectmen of each town obviously act on behalf of each town, and they have met in the past, and there really haven't been productive outcomes, I would say. Orleans has been pretty much centered on trying to get town support for their own plan, and I think fairly I could say that our town has focused at the highest degree on our water project, which is a huge infrastructure project that will go on for the next 10 years or more. So I think that our primary focus has been a little bit different than theirs. Our highest priority was getting the public health component behind us, and we are in the process of doing that, which really takes up a lot of energy in terms of our Board of Selectmen's priorities. So now we are focused on the environmental aspect of wastewater, or nutrient integrated, I would say, integrated approaches to nutrient reduction in our estuaries. And one of the grants that I received from the commission actually focused on one little component of it is a collaborative effort with the two towns. My feeling about how to move in that direction was to start off with this cooperative sampling program, because then we have something to talk about and we have a commonality to move forward and new information for both towns that will provide us with current day assessment of the water quality in Nauset Estuary, our highest priority in terms of our focus at this point. So we will be working with them as time goes on, and I would say that they meet a lot, and I do mean a lot. They have spent millions of dollars on consultants. They have consultants hired to facilitate the work of their consultants. So, I mean, it is a great deal of effort, and honestly, I think that Adele's right, that by reviewing a lot of the work effort that's been done there, we're benefiting,
Yeah.
you know, from just observing what they're doing. And we will be doing that in the future, because clearly, if, you know, I've said once, I've said it 1,000 times, if we really wanted to solve the problem, it needs to be a joint solution to the problem. So we are working on those two hybrid approaches, that those technical memorandums 3 and 4. Our consultant is GHD. They are putting that work together for us, and that will give us direction. Some of our work effort is centered around those preliminary things that I said we're trying to do now, some of that pilot work, looking at the confined salt pond watershed. So that is part of the work, and then the cooperative part will be looking at the shared watershed, which is a little more complex because it involves allocation.
The shared one, Jeff,
the
is
shared-
Town Cove. On
yeah.
the Salt Pond
So,
is all ours, is Town Cove.
we as communities are gonna have to accept what we're contributing, and then we need to offset or reduce the load to hopefully get at a positive endpoint. So some of the work that was done by the Cape Cod Commission to develop estimates was based on Cape-wide wastewater allocation, which is we feel the town of Eastham and our consultants feel is an overestimate. So there's a lot of work to be done here. I don't want to like hang us up on, some of the getting in the weeds, of the problem. But that is certainly something that we have expressed and will continue to represent as professional representative for the town. Those are issues we need to continue to discuss, but we're really focused on, I'd say as we get those reports back, it will give us some focus and some place to start. But the town of Orleans has grappled with town meeting, and it hasn't, it hasn't been dissimilar to Eastham's experience with water supply. So, we need them to work with us in the future, but really they've been, I think, focused on trying to gather town support. So I don't know if that answers your question. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of cooperation to be developed.
Yeah, well, one major issue that's up for grabs is assuming that we will have to do some sewering. It has to go someplace. And so far, place has not been identified. Originally, it was thought that it would go to the new plant that Orleans is building. But as they have developed through this process, their current thinking is that they don't want to take sewerage from anybody else. So that is something that will have to be ironed out.
That was our
as
original
time goes
plan.
on. Yeah.
Based on our original wastewater planning in 2009, we actually did a great deal of work with their former consultants, Wright Pierce, and felt that it would be more beneficial to both communities, economy of scale. You can build a bigger plant at a lower cost with concentrated participation from a confined area, namely the Town Cove area. So we looked at our best objective as sending our wastewater to the treatment plant, and as Adele's changed, now they've completely altered the approach that they plan to take going forward. That means there's no room for us. There might be some added additional capacity, but they've been, and our selectmen have approached their selectmen, there have been discussions, and we've expressed our interest to move in that direction, but clearly the town did not support that plan. So we're back on the drawing board, and our consultants are working on those two technical memorandums, which will address some of that need.
Yeah, and in terms of the Board of Selectmen, Jane correctly mentioned that they have been busy, very busy, obviously, on the drinking water stuff. Some of the major decisions they will have to make on that are coming to an end within the next couple of months. They've got these draft regs. They will have to choose an operator, because there's talk of actually having water by October or November. Well, but by the time water starts to flow to people's homes, there has to be an operator of the system. So that decision will have to be made shortly. And all of the other decisions about the basic operations of the system should be completed sometime by this fall. And from then on, it's a case of completing the construction and the operations, but unless things come up that require policy changes or things, there will not be a lot probably that will consume the Board of Selectmen, who actually, for this capacity, serve as the Board of Water Commissioners in terms of the drinking water system. So.
Yeah. My best hope was that the two towns, as they addressed the wastewater situation, would benefit from each other's work. It's I see it kind of as a generational decision, and as it's coming to the point where the generation we're in right now, us, needs to make a good decision as to how both towns will be doing things in the future. And so I see it as a challenge for Eastham to make sure that we take advantage of the opportunities that are there to us. And I do understand that, when the Cape Cod Commission did the update of the 208 plan, well, basically they finished working on the plan in June of last year, but the previous update was in 1978. So that's where I get my generational statements, okay? It's been waiting since 78 for something more to happen to it, and it finally happened, so it's a time to seize the opportunity. Let's see, I've got a couple comments. Having to do with what I've heard at the meetings in Orleans regarding shellfish. So I want to bring that up, but I'm just kind of trying to make our sequence of discussions make sense. I guess perhaps I could shift to, we were talking a little bit about the construction of the water system here in Eastham. And I just want to remind you that on the 13th of August, I guess I didn't bring my book, but I believe it's at 9 o'clock in the morning, there is the training for the contractors and the plumbers who then folks in the town would hire to make the connection between the main land that's out in the street and the building that it's going to serve. I understand there's been about, there's been one on the 2nd of August. There was a plumbers and contractors training session here. I haven't talked to anybody who attended it, but as I say, we have another one coming up on the 13th, and I wanted to go and just know a little bit more about the technology that they use.
I think what's useful for people to know is that after that training session, and I assume there'll be some, under this news and announcements online, it'll be there, that there will be a list published of the people who have been trained and therefore are acceptable under the, and I assume that won't change, under the proposed regulations. You must use an approved contractor or plumber. You're not free to choose someone outside that list. I don't know how soon, but the list is supposed to be published after the second training. Go ahead, Joe.
Charles, on that subject, I've had people ask me what the hookup cost will be and the ongoing costs and all those related issues, and I have no answers. Is there information out there now?
Yeah, well, not for, a lot of the information is derived from what went on ever since, even since I came to town, I guess, at least 2011. Their hookup, per se, the idea that this, like some towns, Wellfleet has what's called a hookup fee, which means you pay the town a certain amount to connect to their system. At this point, Eastham will not have a hookup fee. You will not, your costs will be what it costs to actually bring the piping and install the meter, but there is no hookup fee. And those costs you'll be paying to the plumber or contractor that you choose. The figure that I have heard, and I mean, these are just estimates, so you can't, nobody is guaranteed anything, is that it's $12 a foot, a running foot from the curb box, which is very close to the road. So you figure from the curb box back to wherever it has to enter your house. That's $12 a foot, assuming the normal trenching and that sort of stuff. If, in fact, that pipe is going to need to go under, as in the case of my house, I have 2 walkways that the pipe will have to go under. Or maybe people have, could be walkways, people could have landscaping that they don't want to disturb. Then they do something called molding, which they go down further. And, you know, they don't dig a trench, they have to go through with some other. That, I understand, is gonna cost more than $12 a foot, but I don't know how much more. And then there will be the cost of whatever the plumber charges you to hook up the meter and to connect it to your water line in the house. And the figure, again, this is just an estimate that people have used. The figure I've heard for that is roughly around $300. Now, some people will have a slightly higher cost for that because, again, under the current regulations, and probably these will stay, if your house is more than 150 feet from the curb stop, from the road, or if your meter would not be located in a space that has some heat, or that is at least 4 feet underground. So if it's 4 feet underground, it doesn't have to be heated. If it's not, it has to have some heat. If you don't have either of those two things, you will have to use what's called a meter pit. And there also, it depends on the size of the meter. You could need a vault. I think the vaults and those other things are more for commercial establishments. I don't know. People could look at the regulations and get more specifics on them. But I think the average homeowner who runs into this, they're talking about a meter pit. And that pit will be out near the curb box by the road, and the meter will be installed in that pit. And my understanding is that's, again, a few $100, the pit, in addition to the meter, so. But these are all, my understanding.
You have all this
Don't-
information, Adele, has that been available to people, or?
Well, yeah, we had, God, which year was it? One year, one of the years it didn't pass, there was a lot of written material. We wrote some material, the Water Management Committee wrote some material. Then there was a lot of written material put out by the town. Then they had a series of presentations. In fact, I'll get the date for that. And, because a lot of that information is still good, and then I'll send it to you. I guess I could send it to Mike would know, but Jimmy might not know, and Suzanne wouldn't know, and you wouldn't know probably. There was these series of presentations, I think there were 5 or 6 of them. They went through the specifics of the proposed municipal water system. And one was on this particular topic, how people would get connected to the system and how it would work and that sort of stuff. And then there was just all sorts of different, I forget what the different topics were for each one of them. And so a lot of this material was given out in that way. And then in subsequent years, it wasn't as thorough as that, but there was some repeat of some of the basic information. Now, I'll try to send that to you.
That's helpful, thank you. I'm expected to know this stuff when people ask me.
Yeah, I know, it's hard.
And I
There's
don't
so much
know.
to catch up with.
And I realize you can't be really specific at this point.
Yeah, well, no, I think even,
These are general numbers.
This was, for example, the figures on piping and meters was one of the selectmen talking to plumbers and contractors in town and getting their estimates of what it would cost. But, of course, that too was a few years ago, so who knows? Certainly, the cost of the water system went up. Every year that it got voted down and had to come back the next year, it would cost a little bit more than the year before. So the
Yeah.
pipes may cost more.
Yeah, the approach that I've been taking with the town water supply construction was that discuss the information here at the table as to what we know, but basically leave it to the town staff and the contractor to announce the information they have when they're ready to announce it. And such as going to this training meeting on Saturday, I figured, well, perhaps there'll be some discussion. I do know that basically to make a connection from the main line to the house, there's the task of putting in the meter. And my understanding is that the person who is contracted by the homeowner goes to the town and gets the meter to then install. And then basically, based on their trade's experience, knows the best way to putting a pipe between the meter and on into the house and all that kind of business. And the meters are read electronically, which is very nice, because I've heard discussions about other towns, and to have that capability now is just going to be a big,
But you can't put the meter in the basement? I mean,
Oh,
instead
you
of putting it
can.
in heated area?
I'm not sure. I was-
Yeah, but if you put it in the, well, I have read the regs, Charles, so that's what
Okay.
I'm going. Oh, plus,
Yeah,
it's just-
good.
this has also been discussed at various workshops of the Board of Selectmen. If your meter will go in a place in your basement that has heat,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Okay.
But, and people have different
Meter
sense.
box sounds expensive.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a couple $100, whatever that, though, on the other hand, the way I look at it is this way. If you go away for an extended period of time in the winter, if your meter is in the basement, you're either gonna have to leave your heat on, so it will stay, the meter will stay okay and not freeze, or else you got it out there in that meter pit, and Mother Nature's gonna take care of it. So I'm just as happy that it's going in a meter pit. I wouldn't really, I don't have any alternative. For reasons known only the people who built this house, our water comes in not into our basement, but into this separate little room that's next to the basement, and therefore outside the heated area of the house. And it goes into this thing that is in some way accelerates the pressure from the pump so that it pushes the water into the house at, a higher pressure than if it's just getting pumped up by the well. I'd never, what do I know? I lived in a city all my life. I'd never lived with a well before, never mind this sort of thing. So, and anyway, it's an unheated space. And there's, so if we had a meter in there, we would be subject to having to get the meter disconnected or something when we went away so that it wouldn't freeze on us. So,
Well, I would suggest anybody that does have questions or is interested in the development of the policy, attend the meeting.
yeah.
And if you can't attend the meeting, they're always filmed, so that you
And
can
it'll be
go
broadcast, I'm
back
sure.
video on demand, so if you just look for that particular date, right on our website. And I'm sure that there will be many opportunities, or a lot of questions to be asked and answered, so,
Well, this is it right
Yeah.
yeah, you can have that.
Can I have it?
Yeah, it's on,
Those the
and
regs?
that, this is just a hard copy of
Yeah, well, that's,
what's on
it's
that
in there.
website,
There's
but
a,
it's right on the website for
I think
everyone
it's
to read.
section 4 or something talks about meter pits and that.
Yeah,
and
they
then
do discuss
they
some of
go
the
through.
fees and some of
I
the other
was reading a good novel.
responsibilities.
Actually, it's not as bad as it looks. I went through it pretty quickly on Saturday, so it's not that long.
Are the meters read electronically from the street?
Are they
think
read
that's-
by,
I think that's the plan.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
hear the question, so.
Oh, were the meters read electronically from the street? They don't have to come in the
Yeah,
house?
Yeah.
oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
they don't go in there. I don't even think they need to be near your house, is my understanding.
Well, usually, we,
They need to be within a certain area, but it isn't like, when they come for the electric company, they gotta come up and they gotta be 6 feet away or whatever it is they come. But I don't even think they have to be that close. I
we
think-
had them put in where we moved from. I mean, we had regular meters
Yeah.
that were read outside, and they had the electronic one. I think the guy just drives by in the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep, yeah, so we've talked about the sampling on Noshit Marsh. Jane has brought us up to date on that it continues. And she's also said that we've continue on with our technical memos, so we've talked about that. The next one down I see is, I wanted to tell you a little bit more of what I've picked up on the shellfish business. And as it turns out, I don't know, a year or so ago, I was identified as the alternate from Eastham to attend the Orleans Water Quality Advisory Panel meetings. And I enjoy that because it's the professionals and it's the people paying the money for the system that they discuss the various options and possibilities. Along with that, I go to what is now the Shellfish Subcommittee within the Orleans Water Quality Advisory Panel. And where they are now is, well, the idea is to use shellfish to filter the water in a pond that the term that I guess folks use is terminal pond. And a terminal pond is like what we have here for Salt Pond by the Visitor Center. It's one of those glacial kettles that is close enough to salt water that has, in fact, a saltwater connection. And there are, it seems like 5, 7 of those situations down in Pleasant Bay, so it represents a particular kind of setting that the professionals are trying to come up with a solution for. And it is saltwater, so they're thinking, okay, well, the shellfish may be able to do enough of the picking up of the algae to make a significant and less expensive change in water quality. So they have Lonnie's Pond, and they have put in bags of oysters that are floating on the surface, which is apparently how you do that. And they were small oysters. I can't give you the exact details, but most of them were, I guess, someplace around an inch in size, but there was another fairly large group, something like 400,000, that were 2 inches. And the difference in the sizes was just the difference in what the market allowed them to make a good purchase last spring when they needed to move forward and do it. So the oysters are there, and the town of Orleans has engaged SMAS to do all of the monitoring. So there is a large number of SMAS monitor people who are coming and checking. I understand too that they've been able to put in 2 of the floating, always reporting buoys in the pond. So I guess they call them saunas or something. I'm not sure how the end of the word it goes, but it's a sauna something. So they have those, and so they're measuring. I guess they'd be doing temperature and salinity and anything that is fairly easy to pick up in an electronic sense. They did raise the question of what will we do with the grown oysters that we're producing? You know, we have them there to essentially see how clean they can make the water, but we're going to end up with marketable oysters. And so they're working that particular point. And at the meeting, there was a gentleman who suggested, well, why don't you do it the Eastham way? And I don't know whether you're aware of it, but Eastham grows oysters here in Salt Pond in floating bags, and then they set them out in Nauset Marsh for the public to find and harvest. And I did talk with Dick Hilmer of our natural resources folks, and he said that, well, I asked him exactly how he put them out, and he said, well, we put them in a number of places, in places where he knows that the oysters will live, and he knows the public would have some enjoyment of going out and finding. And but it does, I don't know, kind of cleaning up the water just is not that simple. You have to essentially be competent to perform in the oyster market, the oyster growing market. And, you know, as I think about it, I say, well, it is true that Orleans has, I guess, a shellfish committee of the town, a town committee. And it's the committee where the growers discuss the growing of shellfish in the estuaries of the town. And they have shellfish grants and things like that, so that's basically, and the discussions are going on with those folks. The reason the reason I sort of bring this up is that it sort of shows you where they are in their thinking. You know, they went through the heavy engineering of trying to measure how much pollution they had and then they went through the process of finding a design, a possible way to have the shellfish do some of the cleanup work. Now, there is another piece of what they're doing. Apparently, they're going to, let's see, yeah. Apparently, there's another pond down there called Quonset Pond. And the intent is to apparently do about the same thing in Quonset Pond the next growing season. So they're in the process of initiating a work plan, and they're continuing to talk with the growers about their experience. And also, they were looking into the possibility of, in some way, enhancing the grants such that more oysters or shellfish would be living there, and they would in fact be able to pick up from the professional growers different ideas as to what would be smart and what would be something to avoid. So we have that. Let's see. I liked the fact that SMAS has the contract to do the monitoring, because we've had a number of reports come to this town from SMAS, and I've got a sense of how their scientists think, and it's maybe just a little bit easier to understand what's being said, having based on the fact that they've done work in the area already. All right, let's see, have I covered? Yeah, quahogs. One of the next steps for Orleans to do is to do a population survey of quahogs in Town Cove. And basically, they need to know how many are there, and with that number, make some judgment as to whether enhancing the native population or putting in some from a nursery or something would in fact improve the situation. So they are still in the process of drawing up the plan and finding the people that could go and do that type of survey and find out how many quahogs that are living there. But, as I say, I find that interesting because we have estuary in the other end of the Nauset Marsh that might in fact fit into the same situation, or there might be a reason why it's not something for Eastham to do. So, okay, we've handled that one.
So Charles,
Yeah.
these efforts to increase the population of oysters and quahogs in these coves is not just to provide recreational possibilities, but it's to clean up the water?
Right.
Is that the hope? Would it be sufficient to do that?
Well, from what I've heard, we had a person on this committee who was familiar with operations in Sweden, and he said, yes, of course, they have, this is a standard way of doing business in Sweden. And the professionals, the consultants that are working for Orleans' overall consultant, which is AECOM, seem very credible. They seem to have the depth of experience on Cape Cod that you would want to have to do a pilot in this area. And it is certainly true that times before this, there was many more shellfish out there, and they were dealing with a whole lot less of the nutrients that were coming off the land. So, in terms of investing your money in a growing process, involves a whole lot less infrastructure than investing in your money in a treatment device and piping and all that other kind of thing.
I think, though, and again, I'd recommend that on issues like this, folks take a look at the 208 plan, which has extended information on all of the treatment options, including things like use of oysters. And estimates as to how much you can expect them to reduce the nitrogen flow. So I think in any particular situation, like, for example, I don't know that they have a lot of septic systems pouring stuff into their groundwater in Sweden, so I don't know how transferable that is. I mean, I think the issue of any particular treatment option and what it can do depends on what are you asking it to handle. I mean, what is the excess flow that you have to get rid of? And so that's why I don't think that, so far, from my reading of what's gone on in the 208 process, nobody has come up with any magic bullets. I mean, they have various options that, based on estimates, can be expected to do X, and is X enough, or do you have to do Y? So you have to look at a whole package. And that's one of the things that this black box thing is designed to do. Now, Jane says there are problems with working with it. I don't know. But there is data. I mean, there's a discussion, in paper discussion in the 208 plan. And there's something called a technologies matrix, which goes through all these technologies and, then has a discussion of them. So there's a lot of information out there.
What was the name of the pond that they're doing in New Orleans?
It's Lonnie's
Lonnie's,
Pond,
L-O-N-I-E.
right?
Or Y, isn't it?
No, it's IES.
It is IES? I thought it was
Two
Y.
N's, yeah, Lonnies.
And how long have they been doing the oysters in Salt Pond?
For years.
Yeah.
And is that
Yes,
supposed to be cleaned up, or is it just
No, that project started as a recreational project.
for?
Yeah,
city
we have a
events?
neighbor who goes over and collects oysters all the time. It's sort of part of, and a lot of tourists who come will get permit. It's both recreational and there is some income from the town, because you got to get a permit.
It's like an oyster egg hunt.
Yeah,
No, no,
What we call it.
But I mean, but they're incubating them in Salt Pond and then distributing them around the marsh.
I know that they seed. Now,
But they weren't-
Charles says they're incubated in Salt Pond and then distributed, that's fine. But my extent of knowledge is I know that the oysters are seeded. I didn't know the steps for the seeding of them. And and then you can
So the time they're an
plant.
oyster in Salt Pond, they like Salt Pond because there's too much algae? Is that good for the oysters? It must be.
Well, no,
No?
there was a gentleman by the name of Henry Lind, who was employed as the natural resource chief here. He's since retired. He had a very strong background in these situations, so he led the town in establishing the oyster bag activity, and as it turns out, it's a good area for doing that. It's in the seashore, because the seashore kind of comes in there, and it's secure, but it's near the highway, so it's easy to get electricity and that kind of stuff. And the natural resources staff have that as part of their annual workload, is to do the oysters. Now, I don't want to go too far on this, but I believe they also cultivate quahogs, and I think they also have a.
Yeah, you can clam in Salt Pond,
They get little tiny quahogs
not clam, whatever.
and clams, and they have. I've heard people use the term upweller, which means that they have a pump that's drawing water, salt water, out of Salt Pond, and it's bringing it to big vats of small quahogs, and quahogs grow in there. And I think their future is, again, to be set out in the wild, because that fits in with the general win-win situations for the various parties of growing oysters, seeing how they perform, using them to some extent as a indicator of health that's there. We know Salt Pond is struggling because we know the oxygen content is very low at the bottom in the summertime, but we also know it's keeping the oysters growing and keeping the quahogs growing. Other than that, I'm not familiar with the various things the town has come up with for.
So these bags are floating on the surface or near the surface. I guess the oxygen is better up there.
It apparently is the way you raise young oysters. That,
With high success rate, I mean, in the natural world, they're probably down on the bottom.
but the
Yeah.
tide may be open, exposing them
Yeah.
part of the day to air anyways, I don't know.
But the spat comes up to the top and goes in the surface film.
And it stays on the surface, or close.
Well, and then they sink down when they get heavy, but they need a certain kind of bottom to stick to. It's gotta be hard, rocky, with oyster shells in it.
So that's why they moved.
It's the wrong kind of bottom, that's why they don't make it there.
Are there a lot of them in a single bag, or?
Yeah, hundreds.
Okay, so what happens when they get out of, but they stay in the bag until someone
Lets them go.
Until they take them to the marsh.
Yeah, they take them and they just start throwing them out of the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
I
imagine.
don't know, I get the feeling that it's really about 2 years from a baby oyster to a
Yeah,
mature
it doesn't
oyster.
take very long. They go
Yeah.
pretty quick.
Yeah.
It all depends how often you change their cages. They can only grow so big to their environment, then they stop growing. You gotta take some out and then they'll grow and.
Yeah, so it's, I was make a joke here, it's a whole lot more fun to do wastewater work on Cape Cod than it is in Kansas. We have lots of options that are just great fun to
Very interesting.
make decisions over. All right, let's see, yeah, I know what I want to do next here, let's see. I just wanted to pass around, and I'm taking a chance that Jane is not going to say that I'm doing the wrong thing. Okay, this is last year's results from the sampling that was done out in Town Cove. And the yellow is the one monitoring station that Eastham had in the Orleans program. The Orleans folks were taking the effort to manage this and to pay for it. And they essentially extended as a courtesy to us to process samples 5 times in the summer. And I wanted to pass this around because actually this is, I mean, it goes like this. It starts over here, and up at the top you have all of the different, how deep was it, how much oxygen was there, how much total nitrate was there, and that kind of thing. But, you know, the samples that we're doing, the 5 that Jane is putting an awful lot of effort into these days, will come back in another year and we'll have a report like this. So I just
We were
wanted,
just wondering yesterday morning if they put it together in any meaningful fashion, which that table is great, but as far as like, but what does it
lot.
mean?
Yeah,
Like
that's-
some
that's the
sort of,
issue
like,
we've
little
discussed,
blurb
yeah.
of like analysis or
Well,
something would be nice.
yeah, I think that's what basically SMAS is supposed to do.
Not like
They're
the-
supposed to come up with, is this too much or too little, or that sort of thing. That's how they did the MEP reports,
Yeah.
basically.
Especially if you're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do them.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of numbers unless you're a scientist, that's the problem.
Well, yeah, and then you have all the volunteers, so I was thinking of like, well, how do you give something back to the volunteers, like they just did this work, now like, what's like the
Some of the
snapshot of the work that they did, and what does that mean
Yeah, yeah,
for them,
that's-
not the long technical report.
Yeah.
Maybe the abstract, the opening, the conclusion,
Yeah.
Yeah.
put that together.
We're still trying to get that for the pond sample.
Well, on the estuaries, they want the sampling to be done early morning. I think just because it's calm weather, did you get any other reason why it's always at 8 o'clock and 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning?
on an outgoing tide.
On
Yeah.
ebb tide, which means you have to have the right date.
Right.
Yeah, but ebb tide could be any time of day, so,
well,
but
no,
why do they, that's why
No,
do
no,
they
no,
pick the
but-
morning? That's why, you're asking why do they pick the morning?
No, I think but I mean, they pick a date when the ebb tide is at
Yeah,
that time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they want the middle of the tide, but they don't want to do it on weekends,
Right.
for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And it should have been done on Saturday instead of Monday this week, because the tide was too low when we went out on Monday.
Is that why you were all late?
No, but there, I think there's also, the sample has to then get transported, and it's sensitive to degradation. So the rest of.
yeah.
Oh, why is it
Maybe
done in the
another
morning?
reason. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
thought
could
it was
be,
just because it's
yeah.
always good weather.
Oh.
And also, we get out there ahead of the people with their, the pleasure people.
Oh, yeah, no,
Can
that
get
makes
out,
sense.
get in and out of the ramp, and there's nobody,
Yeah,
you know.
you have to be able to get to a lab.
No, it is, no, this is just what I picked up as having been in the area. We're fortunate in that there is the, I guess it's called the Pleasant Bay Alliance, which is
That's where all the
which is
samples go.
a citizens group. And they essentially saw the need to collect good scientific information about water quality in Pleasant Bay. And so able people got together, came up with a program. I believe the standards for sampling were professionally done. So we're fortunate in that it was expanded on Orleans part for Town Cove, and we were also able to add one of our stations in there. Now, we need 3 years of good data, 5 good samples, in order for to meet the engineering standard as to how accurately you know the condition that you're trying to change. So that's basically, we can't do engineering work for another 2 years until we have the other samples in. But we're lucky in the fact that we have data going back for the other end of Town Cove, which we can kind of make some assumptions. Professionals can make the assumptions as to how representative previous years are down in Town Cove as to what we would be having up at our end of it. But it's, no,
Well, our first 2 readings were just about dead on mid-tide going out, which was perfect.
uh-huh,
But the one on Monday, which probably should have been Saturday or Sunday, but they didn't want to do it on the weekend, was below. It was still going out, so the readings were probably good, but it was very hard to get the boat out of at Goose Hummock, because it was just about dead low when we were trying to get the boat out afterwards.
well.
You can understand that.
We're fortunate that we have a person down in Orleans on one of their water management committees that makes those hard calls. Okay, this is the date because the tides are going to be like
Yeah.
this, and that's when we go.
Yeah,
That's when we
well-
assemble the volunteers.
Yeah, if you weren't using the Goose Hummock ramp, like you put a kayak in or something, no problem.
Oh yeah,
You'd walk the boat in.
yeah. So.
But the samples are being analyzed by SMAS.
Oh,
And since they're the same people who did the MEP reports. And the MEP reports
Gotta run.
basically are based on the water samples pre-existing and from which they drew conclusions.
Okay.
Do you know
I just
which-
have to get to Truro and whatnot, so.
Do you,
Okay, Suzanne, thank you.
Jen, do you know which site it was that they were doing previously? They had numbers.
Well, they have been doing the Salt Pond apparently for the last 10 years
Oh,
or so.
Salt Pond.
Salt Pond, yep.
And Town Cove.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been monitoring all, that's
Right.
another thing. If people know when we tell you MEP reports, what this is all about. This is part of what kicked off the whole 208 process. The state decided to do an examination of the water quality in all of the estuaries on the Cape. And they were done by SMAS and somebody else, and I forget what MEP stands for. They came out with these MEP reports. Yeah, yeah, Massachusetts, probably environmental something, anyway. So they came out with these MEP reports.
Estuary, yeah.
Estuary, and then they were supposed to lead to TMDLs, which would be what the permissible amount of nitrogen was in the water body. And they completed TMDLs for some of the estuaries, mainly the Upper Cape. we have a draft one, like for Town Cove and Salt Pond and for Rock Harbor, but that they never got beyond the draft status yet. And then, while this was all going on and people were debating back and forth as to how valid the numbers were for the TMDLs and that, this whole 208 process kicked in. But the 208 process, basically, in terms of their nitrogen loading numbers, bills off these MEP reports. And so that's where this all comes from. So monitoring has been going on for a long time. And I guess one of the questions now, and one of the reasons for doing this 3-year sampling, is are these numbers, since I think that these are pre-2009 numbers they're working with, are they valid for the current circumstance? There's some feeling that perhaps I don't know whether you would call them high or low, but that their reduction targets are too high. But the only way they could show that is by showing that the nitrogen in the water is not as bad as, what the MEP reports had indicated. So.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the people that, from the Orleans and Chatham who are doing this, it sound like they just assume it goes on forever.
Oh, yeah, well, I guess, yeah, you
I mean,
go on
They're not
forever.
gonna stop because at the end of 3 years or anything.
No, well, they want to know what the water
They probably
quality
wouldn't
was.
expect us to, but you have to have 3 years' worth before you can start.
Before you can-
meaning any-
well-
Getting any meaning out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because basically you're going to spend public money to bring down the percentage of nutrients that are considered excess. And in that program that Adele has been referencing, there is, kilograms of nitrogen per dollar type
Oh,
of,
per dollar. Yeah.
per dollar figure, and that's used in the computations through the program, is how much they expect to get, and of course, that has to be peer reviewed, how much would be brought down, and then how much money would we be spending to do that. The-
Charles, I regret to tell you that you will have to get me a copy of that, because.
yes, ma'am.
You have to, town clerk.
Oh.
They have to maintain copies of anything
Anything
provided or exhibited at these meetings. So-
Well, okay, I will do that. There are places I know that can make a good copy of that. So I collected some samples there in Salt Pond, and I wanted to, if you look at, as the dates advance, the amount of oxygen in the bottom water goes down, and it goes down. There's normally, 8 milligrams per liter would be a fully oxygenated water. And towards the end of the summer, you get down there with a 0.3 milligrams. So it's,
It's Salt Pond.
at Salt Pond, which is a whole order of magnitude.
Oh, it's actually at 8 at the beginning?
Yeah, 8 milligrams per liter would be fully oxygenated water at
Charles
the
is saying
surface.
that it's actually measured ever at 8, but that would be the acceptable level, 8
Yeah, but he
milligrams.
said it got down to 0.3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it- 'cause
he
the-
doesn't
yeah,
mean from eight.
That's one of the numbers on the sheet that we're passing around. Yeah. And we're talking about a bottom that had flounder living on it
Yeah.
20 years ago from,
It's a lot of information.
and so, and the, it's down there, and it basically, it's got a backlog of organic material that has not broken down that causes the oxygen level to go that low. Now, in previous times, it didn't have the history of accumulated biomass down at the bottom, just sitting there undecomposed because there's not enough oxygen to decompose it. It's just kind of sitting there in an anaerobic state and not breaking down very quickly. And so, anyways, well, I think I've come to all the points that I really wanted to bring up. Everyone is, Mike?
I'd like to comment to all the members of the committee that Windmill Weekend is an excellent place to meet townspeople and be ambassadors to getting them on board for our municipal water. Charles, I'm doing another table 9 to 12 on that Sunday, but I'll join you from 12 to 1. And Charles loves to have company there, and
Yeah.
he gives a comprehensive report to citizens who ask questions. You might be able to give a more
That's really
abbreviated
good.
one. Join him for a half hour, an hour if you can on Saturday. He's usually in that back corner. It's a lovely way to meet people, and some of the questions that you might get from other townspeople, you'll probably hear voiced during those 2 days. So if you can afford a half hour, an hour, join Charles. Thank you.
That's where I met Charles.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I think there's only one other thing that's worth mentioning, and I guess the members of the committee all have, they followed the link, they saw the article in the Globe on corrosive groundwater, which was
Right.
sort of
You wanna
startling
talk
to
about
me. No, that was what was in the magazine this
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 one.
Sunday, but there was, oh, that one, okay. I didn't print it out, so I have no idea what it looks like when you print them out. Yeah, that's it. I mean, what was startling to me, obviously I knew about it. In fact, we've been using one of those filters to cut down on the blue staining. And I knew that obviously it could over time cause damage to your pipes and all the rest of it. And in my thinking, if you had old pipes and had lead in the pipes, it could, wash out that lead into your drinking water. I naively believed, since we had our house renovated in 2004, 2005, that we didn't have to worry about that, because obviously we had new pipes, we didn't have lead. What I read in that groundwater article that I found startling was that they were actually using lead solder in pipes up until 2014 in Massachusetts, which I found both startling and shocking that they were allowing them to use lead solder.
But what type of pipes?
Water
Copper.
pipes.
Yeah, because we had a house done in 2008, it's all plastic. There's no copper, no metal.
Oh,
no
we don't have
They
that.
still
We
have
have
copper
copper.
in spots.
And you sweat the joints.
What?
They
No?
still have copper manifolds and copper shooting out of the walls and copper shut-offs.
Yeah, we had.
And they
all-
wash
No,
all the
no.
copper still today with acid before they solder it.
Yeah.
Well-
And the other thing is the
That
newer
amazes me.
The newer fittings on the shut-offs are press fits. You don't sweat anything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
but
they
you're talking
have
about
those.
2008. There
Those
are a lot
aren't
of
very good
houses here in
fittings.
East
Older
End
than
that were
that, but you
built.
said 2005.
They
but you said
used lead solder up until 2014.
They were allowed to, but very few people were doing it. In fact,
I have no knowledge. I only know what I
they-
read in the
They probably
newspapers.
didn't outlaw it
They
until
allowed it.
2014, but I don't think it was a practice in 2008. It was very
I
uncommon
I
at
didn't,
that point.
we didn't do it in 2008. We did ours in 2004. And we don't have plastic, we have copper. And, I don't know what's there, but frankly, I'm very happy that public drinking water is coming. I hope to be one of the first people who connects to the system. I am very eager for its advent, for a number of reasons, to be done with all this stuff.
I'm in phase 5, and I'm not holding my breath.
Well,
That's 10 years, right?
well, you never know. They may be able to go faster. This one is certainly moving
Well,
faster than they
I mean,
predicted.
the bad news is 10 years from now. The good news is the reason I'm in phase 5 is because we're right next to where they're getting the water from.
Oh, so you're in a good spot.
I mean,
yeah.
we're easy to
By the
follow.
way, if anybody's noticed, they
Yeah.
are flushing.
Yes.
The hydrants have been getting flushed, so.
Yeah. I was just looking at these things, the WMOs, they do not list 28 and 29, which is one Suzanne and I are doing, because they didn't, it's their new ones.
Right, exactly, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
The-
And by the way, Sandy Baines is on our team also, and my wife,
Yes,
4 of us.
yes, yeah.
And we do 2 sites.
Okay. Yes, yes, and now, I think that
Now, you
the
still do,
site,
you still do the salt pond, don't
I do Salt Pond, yeah, that's been sort of a,
you? For a while.
it's been sort of a legacy site, but when they did the MEP sampling, I think places like WO 29 was one of the old sampling sites.
Oh,
They just reactivated it, and because it does have the value of a professional going back and seeing what was going on 10 years earlier and making some judgments as to whether it's related or not related. You know, there's so much sand shifting and that kind of stuff going on out there. You need a good mind to understand what's going on.
29's a funny site. It's close to the shore. I think it's closer than it's supposed to be, the way the buoy is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a boat's width on this side, you get 2.3 meters. If you're right on the buoy, you get 1.7. It's like, this bob's like that.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know you know, like, the other ones, we could see the thing going all the way down, but when we're a little bit further over and we're deeper, this how do you spell that?
Secchi?
Secchi. The Secchi thing, if you're in the shallow water, you see it all the way to the bottom.
yeah. Do you see Secchi all the way to the bottom?
Only on the shallow one. On the deeper ones, we don't.
Okay, yeah.
At about 1.7, we're still seeing, and that's when we hit bottom. When we hit the bottom at 1.7, we're still seeing that.
Yeah, no,
Or at least we did
I'm,
last time, not this time.
yeah, no, I think that the paper shows that in Salt Pond, that we lose visibility of the disk at, you know, less than 2 meters.
Oh, yeah, it's about
Yeah,
where we are.
and,
Yeah.
That's,
1.7 is typical
yeah. Going out there.
for what we're doing. It's probably pretty much the same water, but that's what we're trying to find out, right?
Yeah, what was it? I was, I don't know. I think we have come to the end, but let's see, field saturation. Yeah, I think if I'm reading this right, okay, so on the 3rd of September last year, in Salt Pond, that would have been the last reading of the year, we had 0.39 milligrams per liter of dissolved oxygen down at, I guess we're at about 4 meters down. Okay, and that really converts to 4.2%. The water had in it only 4.2% of the water that, of the oxygen that it otherwise would have had at the surface.
Was that site number 38?
38.
Okay.
Yeah, and let's see, I was just kind of looking here for the surface. So that the surface would have been 74%. The surface had 74% of the fully oxygenated water. You know, water that's cold and that's tumbling down a waterfall. You know, that would
Niagara Falls.
approach 100% of oxygen.
It would be
74%, 74.1% of the oxygen that fit at that temperature that the
was
water.
at the surface.
That was surface. Yeah, and I'm just,
No, you're a lot deeper than where we're going, and that's why, I mean, we get pretty high oxygen, but we're not, we're in shallow water.
yeah. So, and to me, that's telling. If, you know, you don't have to be a scientist to realize that fish get their oxygen from the water, and if there's no oxygen in the water, it's a dead zone down there. And that's in a place where the flounder used to live, you know, when we were kids. So anyways, that's a simple way of understanding the hard work that we do to go get the samples. Okay, do we have a motion to
I move
adjourn?
we adjourn.
All right, second.
I'll second it.
All in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
So we have 7-0. Thank you.
6-0.
Oh, yeah,
Suzanne
6 zeros.
She would have wanted to leave.